Well, that's yeah. Man, I've been talking here for what time is it? For almost 10 minutes. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, is there an echo now? Now that you can hear me, do you hear an echo? Because I was trying a slightly different audio setup because um you should be able to hear me now. I'm hoping you can hear me now. Yeah, okay, great. Um, I was trying a slightly different audio setup because I was thinking about it, and I'm pretty sure that if I do get a Zoom call, there would be an echo. So I was trying to mute one of my mics and go through a different audio channel. Fantastic, no echo. Hopefully, if I do get a Zoom call, there won't be an echo either. I'm not 100% sure about that. We'll see. Or actually, no, I think the issue was if I get a Zoom call, I don't actually have my audio going through Zoom. I've got my audio muted through Zoom, or I did in the past, and so I was worried the guest wouldn't be able to hear me. But if you're saying there's no echo, I can have my audio on Zoom because that's what I did this time. None of this matters to you guys. Enough talking about the audio. So, starting over again, starting from scratch, man. All right. So, first question, first thought, first things first. Were you taught in school that the ancient Egyptians didn't have the wheel? That's what I want to know first off. Do you remember being taught one way or the other? Do you not remember at all? Were you taught that the ancient Egyptians had the wheel? Let me know in chat. I very much want to know the answer to that question. I was definitely taught that the ancient Egyptians didn't have the wheel. I remember that very clearly in school. That was in the textbooks. It was a well-known fact that the ancient Egyptians didn't have the wheel. And in my research this week, which I definitely did more research this week than for any other episode. And probably because of that, I've been struggling to figure out the flow of this episode, how I'm going to connect every single different thought that I want to connect. And I haven't really figured it out. So I've just winged it for 10 minutes, and I'm going to try and wing it again. So, did the ancient Egyptians have the wheel? Were you taught that? Let me know in the comments. And I'm going to go ahead and play this video again a little bit. This is scientists against myths who are displaying some rather wheel-like technology to try and explain a vase that is over 4,500 years old. So this is scientists against myths, the same people who it wasn't dwelled upon, but they had chariots. At one point in Egypt, but certainly not in the early kingdom. In the late kingdom, I believe, yes, they did have chariots. In the early kingdom, I was certainly taught that they didn't have the wheel, they didn't have chariots. And it makes a lot of sense that you wouldn't find wheeled vehicles in the Sahara Desert because it's a desert and wheels and sand aren't really compatible with each other. But the idea that they didn't ever invent or understand the wheel always seemed pretty ridiculous to me. And just because you didn't find wheeled vehicles didn't mean that the concept of wheels wasn't understood. So in the background here is a lady creating out of marble, not granite, a vase, trying to recreate the vases that we see from the pre-dynastic period, the vases that Ben from Uncharted X has been talking about so much. And they're using copper and stone tools with some wooden framing. Their channel name is Scientists Against Myths, which I find to be interesting because what they're doing right here with this video is creating a myth. And it might not be an outlandish myth, it might be totally grounded in reality, but it's a myth nonetheless because there is absolutely zero evidence for any. True. About 7,000 years ago, it wasn't a desert, and it took a few thousand, or it was a rainforest 7,000 years ago. Took a few thousand years to turn into a desert. Although that's one of those types of facts that just gets repeated, kind of like the Big Bang and expanding universe theory, that everyone takes for granted, and I don't necessarily put too much weight into it. But as I was saying, Scientists Against Myths, they're creating a myth here because there is zero written evidence for any technology of the type they're displaying, nor any physical evidence of the type of technology that they're displaying. There are in the early kingdom, well after the pre-dynastic period, not well after, immediately after actually, there are some techniques like they're displaying right here, but this wooden framing back here, this type of technology, there's never been any physical evidence of this found. There's never been any written evidence of this found. So they're scientists against myths, and yet they're perfectly happy creating, new inventions to try and explain these old vases. Which I think is a little bit interesting. However, I will give them credit for this is much more in line with the accepted technology than lasers and other Atlantean theories that people have come up with. And at the end of this video, I'm going to go ahead and skip to the end. They managed to make a pretty decent looking vase. It doesn't look bad. It looks pretty good, but you can also see it's very far from perfect. This was made out of marble, not granite, so a lot easier to work than granite, and yet it has a wavy top here. They weren't even able to make a flat surface on the top. Flat surfaces are actually pretty straightforward. You can see that the lip is uneven. The hole in the center is not centered. It's riddled with imperfections. Okay, having said that, that was their very first, sorry, trying to get my screens set up here. That was the very first attempt they made. And pre-dynastic Egypt had hundreds of years to perfect these vases. So the fact that their very first attempt looks like garbage compared to the best examples in pre-dynastic Egypt doesn't mean a whole lot. Yes, Michael, and that is a point that I was going to make in a little bit, but I'll go ahead and get to it now. So, yeah, the flow doesn't matter. I have no flow, so I'm just going to jump straight to that. The tolerances that you just mentioned. There have been people that have been arguing that the vases that have been laser scanned and pressure gauge scanned by Ben from Uncharted X and Chris Dunn are within the possibility of a skilled artisan. And I want to try and explain why not only is it impossible, but it's like several levels removed from possible. So first of all, what's being measured with these vases? There's a few different measurements, but the main measurement are horizontal 2D cross sections. So if you take this vase and you cut out a 2D plane horizontally, you have a circle. Ignoring where the handles are. Let's ignore the handles for a moment. If you take a 2D horizontal cross section of one of these vases that's being scanned by Ben, you theoretically have a perfect circle, right? If the vase was perfect, you would have a perfect circle. And at the top, you have larger circles, then they become more narrow circles, then they get larger again, and then more narrow because of the shape of the vase, right? And so that's what's being measured. They are looking at those circles. They're taking these cross sections of the vase. They're taking thousands of cross sections of this vase. They're taking the 2D horizontal planes and they're comparing them to a perfect circle. And they're going, how closely does this vase at each one of these cross sections match one of these circles? And the answer, at least for the vase that was laser scanned, which if you want to claim that's the most perfect vase out of these tens of thousands of vases, that they managed to pick the most perfect one by pure chance for the first one, and that's why this is so perfect, fine. It doesn't even change my argument. Doesn't matter. It's still impossible by hand tools. So every single 2D cross-section of that vase was perfect within less than the width of a single human hair. It matches a perfect circle at every single 2D cross-section, at every single plane, all the way down through that vase, no matter where you measure it, within less than the width of a human hair. You are not achieving that with hand tools. You're not even achieving that with the types of tools shown in this video. Like Michael was just saying, where's the actual tools? Is this even the same video? This isn't even the same video. Sorry. But yeah, wood does not allow for those types of tolerances. Wood deforms. If you are working and moving wood, it deforms to far greater than the width of a human hair. And then it's going to be a lot greater than that, because the deformity at, the point of motion, let's say it is the width of a human hair, you extend that out over the length of the tool, and where it's actually enacting the force on the vase, that's now the width of 30 human hairs, right? Because it's extended out several inches. So wood simply does not allow for those degree of tolerances. Copper simply does not allow for those degrees of tolerances. Let me try and pull up a video I watched recently. The YouTube algorithm is great. My feed has been full of granite cutting videos, which has been very interesting for me. I've enjoyed it. So yeah, turning a giant piece of granite. This guy built an extremely heavy-duty industrial machine to try and turn granite on a lathe. He's turning a rather large piece of granite, as you'll see here. It's a 1/4 ton, I believe is what he said. And you absolutely need steel to be within these types of tolerances. Wood just doesn't offer tolerances within the width of a human hair. Yeah, that's a very, very steady hand, Michael. And achieving a perfect circle once is something that might be doable, within the width of a human hair. Doing that once, yeah, man, that artisan really got it right. He really nailed it. But what I think people are failing to see is that they didn't achieve it once. They achieved it thousands of times within that one vase. It was thousands of circles stacked upon, each other to create that one vase. And then that's ignoring the handles. Those handles, because the handles cannot be created with something like this. And I want to get more towards the end, towards a finished product. But yeah, you can't leave handles on something like this with a lathe, because obvious reasons, right? And so even with those handles being present, the laser scan still showed that the curve there, right up against the handles, and where the cutouts would be around those circles, still within tolerances of a human hair. This is not being achieved with hand tools. And I struggle to imagine it being achieved with copper and wooden tools for the exact reason that Michael said, which is the tolerances. Getting tolerances within the width of a human hair, using those tools, it just doesn't work. They're too soft to be that tight. So I have no idea what type of tolerance this piece has here. I just want to kind of show the end results. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, this piece that he turned on a lathe. You can see if you watch the edges, there are some ripples in the light. So it's not perfect. As beautiful as this is likely far worse than the vases that are being scanned by Uncharted X, right? Those deviations are probably a lot larger than the width of a human hair. And it's a beautifully polished, mirror finished, well, it's not a vase. I almost said vase. I'm not sure what this is. It's just a beautiful chunk of granite, really, I suppose. But yeah, you can see how much this waves at different parts of this video. This, I'm quite confident, would have significantly larger deviations than these vases do. And this is on a very heavy-duty modern lathe. So yeah, the error tolerances in these vases are far too great. So having said that, I need to make some corrections about some of the things that I've claimed, because almost everything that Leeside has called me out on, he has been 100% correct about. The granite boxes in the Serapeum are not nearly as perfect as I thought they were. Let me find. So this image here, it's incredibly small, and that's probably not a coincidence. I couldn't find a bigger image, a bigger version of this image. This is one of the Duns, I believe, in a Serapeum box, measuring the right degree corner between the lid and a wall of this box. And it looks pretty tight there. Looks pretty good. I could pull up a video, but hopefully you guys will just take me at my word. There are videos actually of the Duns, right? So the guys that are making the claim that this is a perfect 90-degree box, their own measurements, their own videos, if you go and watch them in detail and not just a tiny, tiny, tiny freeze frame from the best part of the video, you'll see that these boxes are very far from perfect, just like Leeside 99 was telling me in the comments. And they deviate by several degrees off of 90, depending on where you measure and in what corner and what part of the corner. And same thing with the flatness of the interior of the boxes. So if you measure the exterior, they're pretty damn flat. And this kind of goes towards what I was saying about lapping, is that lapping, from what I understand, is very effective at making flat surfaces. You can make a pretty nearly very, very perfectly flat surface with lapping without any type of high technology required. But it's not as conducive for the interior surfaces. And you see that in these Serapeum boxes. The interiors are far from perfectly flat. They're far from perfectly 90-degree corners. And yet there are still some very strange things about these boxes. Do I still have... I closed some of the images I pulled up, it seems. Or maybe, no, they're just higher up. Okay, so this is a great website just for the photographs. I really appreciate the photographs here. This is the Serapeum in Egypt, which I think was actually it's accredited to the late kingdom, the new kingdom. and Ben disagrees with that dating. But you can see how tight these hallways are. Like, look at how narrow that hallway is. You could barely pull that box down that hallway with any extra space on the sides. And there's 90-degree corners in these hallways. And if you get down to here, look at how tight this is. I mean, Jesus Christ, that is... It looks like a few inches from the ceiling. So the idea of the explanation that these boxes were moved by putting them on rollers and then rolling them down the hallway. You set an anchor point at one end of the hallway, you tie ropes to it, you tie ropes around the box, or you wrap the ropes around the box, then you pull it along rollers. It seems to make a lot of sense. But then you look at pictures like this, and you go, there's not even room to put rollers underneath that box. It'd be hitting the ceiling. And maybe that's even why that box was left there unfinished. But then there's the question of, why was that box left there unfinished? Why is an unfinished granite box? Because if you look at this box, you compare it to the other boxes, what you're seeing here is an unfinished granite sarcophagus. These have lids. They are hollow on the inside. You can see they are a box. This right here is just a giant chunk of granite. It has not been separated into a lid. It has not been hollowed out. So you can see how narrow these hallways are and how big this chunk of granite is. And they hauled it all the way down there, and it's not even a sarcophagus yet. Probably. I'm kind of retarded, so I don't actually know. Sorry. But probably, yes. But back to what I was just saying, that granite box, I keep calling it a box, but it's not a box. It's just a granite stone. It is just a giant chunk of granite. It has not been turned into a box. It has not had the lid cut off of it, nor the insides hollowed out of it. Why were they hauling down this chunk of granite that I would assume the intention was to turn it? And there's something like 25 or 35, I think it might be 35 of these boxes down here in the Serapeum. It might be 25. I'm kind of retarded, like I just said. And there's only one that is unfinished. There's only one that is just a solid chunk of granite still. So were they finishing these boxes? Were they actually turning these stones into boxes in the Serapeum? Why would they do that? It really makes no sense. This is one of the arguments from Ben, is that they had such ridiculous technology that they could just almost like magic, like just turn it into a box once it's down there, moving an extra 100 tons, because this box, before it's hollowed out, these empty boxes are already like 80 to 100 tons. So before it's hollowed out, it's probably like 200 tons. So moving an extra 100 tons is no big deal. They'll just move that extra 100 tons down there through those hallways like no big deal. And then they were going to, in that extremely confined space, chop off a lid and then hollow out the center of it to make it a box and put the lid back on in that extremely confined space. I don't have an explanation for this. Ben's explanation that, they had this almost magical level of technology almost starts to make sense, because that chunk of granite down there unfinished makes so little sense. It's really confusing as to why it's down there, because I can only assume that its final intention was to become a sarcophagus like the rest of them. So yeah, what I'm getting at here is that many of my claims are were incorrect. Many of the claims I made were incorrect. I never outright said that the Serapeum boxes were perfect, but I was implying it. I'm not going to try and weasel out of that one. The giant circular saws, I'm not going to say it's incorrect, but there's a lot of debatable evidence on this. Flinders Petrie, here's a cut that seems to depict a curve that potentially could be from a very large circular saw. But then you look at this is the same piece down here, and you see there's another curve to it as well, this direction, which kind of completely negates the idea of a circular saw. You can't have a circular saw that bends that way. Yeah. The Aquarian. Hey, good to see you. I don't think I've seen you before. Good to see a new face in the chat. A question for you, the Aquarian. I'm asking it to everyone. I really genuinely want to know, were you taught that the ancient Egyptians, specifically like early dynasty, King Khufu, did they have the wheel? Damn it, Goob. I don't know what you're damning me for. But back to circular saws. So I think it's highly debatable whether or not circular saws existed in ancient Egypt. Flinders Petrie, who, as far as I can tell, is very highly respected by both alternate historians and actual historians alike. Egyptologists and archaeologists respect Flinders Petrie, so do alternate historians. And that's because he did genuine archaeology and a lot of it. He really just went into Egypt, he recorded what he saw, and he recorded in great detail what he saw. And he did this a whole lot. He was very prolific. And so he concluded that the ancient Egyptians had circular saws. And there are other cuts besides this that seem to depict circular saws. There's the cut that I've talked about in a few episodes that I still don't actually have an image pulled up for. But there are other cuts like this. It's an incredibly small image again, but what it's depicting there is a very narrow cut. And as I talked about in the past few episodes, oh yeah, I definitely was wrong about a few things. But as I talked about in the past few episodes, you can't achieve deep and narrow cuts with copper saws. With a drag saw that goes all the way that was almost bad. With a drag saw that goes all the way, longer than the length of the stone, and it's going all the way from one side to the other side, you can achieve some more narrow cuts. But with a push saw, you can achieve, a 1-2 inch deep cut, but anything deeper than that, it starts to get very thick very quickly. And you don't expect to see a curve like this with a drag saw. You would expect to see a convex curve, not a concave curve with a drag saw. And that's not the only example of a concave cut mark in Egypt. So the idea of circular saws being present, it's debatable. It's really debatable. There is no concrete proof to point to them, though. It's entirely possible that they didn't have circular saws. Then we learn why we were wrong. Science, yeah. I still want to know if you were taught in school that the ancient Egyptians didn't have the wheel. I genuinely want to know the answer to that. I was taught it, and it's been a well-known fact to me. And I say a well-known fact, that doesn't necessarily mean most people know it. I mean, if you go out on the street and you ask people who the vice president is, most people don't know that. But I think the vice president is a well-known fact, if that makes sense. So the ancient Egyptians not having the wheel was a well-known fact. But then I watched this video from this guy trying to debunk. Time for a new Zoom meeting. Give me a minute here while I relaunch this meeting. I'm not great at multitasking, so I'm gonna take a moment from my presentation and focus on this for a second. Here is the new invite link. I'm going to paste this in the chat. Here we go. All right. That is the Zoom invite. If you would like to join, you are welcome to call in and discuss this with me. You can disagree, you can agree, you can just bring up a totally new topic as long as it's history related. You don't have to share your face to share your opinions. Feel free to call in via just audio. This is a live call-in show every Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, rewriting history with the Goob. Okay, I typed something wrong. No, I didn't. That's definitely what the frustration. All right, 851-9872. 9653. It doesn't usually take me this long. 9635. Okay, I am a little bit dyslexic. There we go. I'm not actually dyslexic. I'm just kind of tarded. I don't know if that's a 0. I think it's a 0. Yeah, I'm usually a little bit quicker getting back into my meeting. Sorry this took me so long. Thank you for sticking it out with me, if you are. I appreciate it. So I believe I was talking about the wheel. And, oh, what have I done? Oh, no. There's definitely an echo. I can hear myself. All right. Nope. Let's try that. No. Wow. This is going great, folks. You know, I'm just gonna cancel the Zoom. I don't know what's going on. You guys should still be able to hear me, right? You'll just have to listen to me without seeing me. So I watched this video of this guy debunking Ben from Ancient Architects. I don't remember his channel name. It was, yeah, World of Antiquity. Jesus Christ. If you can't tell by the profile picture, this guy is an absolute fill in whatever. I try not to swear on this channel. But man, he is an effeminate, unpleasant, just see you next Tuesday kind of guy. Really, really unpleasant. But he did make a couple good points. But he did something that was very interesting, and he cited several archaeologists who were proposing that ancient Egypt had the wheel, that the pre-dynastic Egyptians had wheeled technology. Yeah, you can email, I'll put it in the chat real quick. There we go. You know, and they were, there was also this hostility, and I've seen this hostility not just from this World of Antiquity guy, but from many various. I'm just going to play a video in the background. These I don't even know what this is, but there's this hostility from a lot of archaeologists towards the public and scientists in general, where they really are like, you idiots believe that, the ancient Egyptians didn't have the wheel. Of course they had the wheel. And I mean, that's something that was not just taught to me in school. Like I said, it was a well-known fact. Everyone understood. Everyone knew. Like I've seen it in pop culture. I've seen it in all kinds of things. The ancient Egyptians never had the wheel. So there's this. I think a few different things are going on. One, there is a massive divide, and I've talked about this, of what is presented to the public versus what is actually going on in the scientific community. And a good example of this is the sonoluminescence dating that was performed in Egypt. They took 3 samples from each location. There were like 5 locations they sampled. This is really cool. What's going on in the background? Bone sawing tools. That's new to me. That's interesting. But they would take 3 samples from each location, and the 3 samples would vary by over 2,000 years, the results. And then every single article written about the test results would go, we confirmed the exact dating of Sneferu's pyramid to 4,829 BC, or whatever, the locations and the dates were. And there were dozens of articles written about this, and all of them said the exact same thing. We confirmed these exact dates. None of them mentioned that the date ranges were over 2,000 years wide. None of them mentioned that the evidence was completely useless, frankly, when it comes to dating. And this is kind of the general theme that you see, is the work that's actually going on within the scientific community, regardless of the field, but it's certainly true for archaeology. It is not represented in reflected in what's shown to the public. I've talked about the silly TV show. Well, I just completely blanked on the name of the silly TV show, but the name really isn't important. It's a cartoon about the ancient Greeks, and it is just a cartoon. It's not meant to be taken seriously, but every episode they make a point to emphasize the technology that the ancient Greeks didn't have. Oh, we had no timekeeping system. Oh, we had no calendar. Oh, we had, no plumbing or this or that. And none of it's true. I mean, even according to archaeologists, they wouldn't tell you this is true. So why is it presented to us as this way? And I talked about this last week. There is a conspiracy. There is a conspiracy to obfuscate the past, because we're living in an illusion today. If we properly understood the past, we would look at today and we'd go, why the hell does everything suck so much today when we have so much better technology? And, things were the way they were in the past. Why haven't things improved? Our technology is improved. Other things should be improving, and they're not. And so in order to control us, in order to successfully get us to exist in this absolute illusion of the present that we're living in, this illusion of reality that we're living in, they have to obfuscate the past to us. And so this leads to a lot of hostility between archaeologists and normal people. And I think that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing for trying to understand what's actually going on. And it breeds this need to dig in your heels. And you see this with real archaeologists, and you see this with alternate historians like Ben from Uncharted X, because some of the claims that I made that were wrong. For example, the Serapeum boxes being these perfect constructions, perfect 90-degree angles, perfectly flat surfaces. It's a claim that he's made repeatedly, that he still makes. I've heard him make it very recently, and it's absolutely untrue. And it's so untrue that it seems extremely unlikely that he wouldn't be aware of this. It seems extremely unlikely that no one's ever pointed out to him that it's untrue. So why does he keep making it? And sure, you could make the argument, for financial reasons, or reputation reasons, but I think a lot of it is also like this hostility. This hostility of, archaeologists don't want to give an inch. They're unwilling to admit that they were wrong even slightly. Same as, these alternative historians, because they're in like this battle, this war. And I just want to get to the truth. I just want to know what the truth is. And I feel like I got a lot closer this week with this research, because a lot of the claims of ancient high technology, they just don't have any backing. And my thumbnail here is of the paving stones on the Giza Plateau from Khufu. Sorry, I believe those are Khufu's paving stones. And Ancient Architects is a channel that I highly respect. I've enjoyed him for years now. He's absolutely fantastic. And he just released 2 days ago a video about the paving stones on the Egyptian plateau here. And these are often cited as evidence for high technology because look at how perfectly flat they are. These have been reconstructed, so it's not in its exact original state, but you can still see that it's extremely flat, really, really high quality paving here in my and many other people's opinions. And I'm not going to play this whole 26-minute video, but the conclusion that he comes to is you can see these natural faults in the basalt. This is the quarry where those paving stones came from. This particular basalt, because basalt has a very wide range of material makeup and hardnesses, this particular basalt's relatively soft. I think it was about a 5 or 6 on the Mohs scale, compared to the red granite of Egypt, which is like a 7.5. And so cutting this, which he's showing there are saw marks, there are cut marks. That was what was just being shown right here. So they definitely did cut this, but then also cutting isn't even all that necessary for a lot of this because of the natural cracks and fissures. I have to go back to the beginning to show that. If I can find a good example here. But these natural cracks and fissures in the basalt, you can just basically put a pry bar in there and pry off chunks of basalt that are perfectly flat. Yeah, bath salts are bad news. Ross V, good to see you. Have I seen Paul Cook? Yeah, I haven't seen Paul Cook, and I'm not 100% sure what you're saying, but it sounds like you might be making a different argument than I'm making, because I agree with Ancient Architects here in that there's nothing about this basalt paving that actually does require high technology. The idea of doing this with copper saws and pry bars, and you can see that cut is significantly wider at the top than the bottom. That's what you would expect to see with a copper saw. These cuts don't look particularly straight even. Doesn't look like super high tech to me. That's a very narrow cut, which is a little bit harder to explain with a copper saw. And there are cuts that I've seen. There's like 20-foot long cuts in rocks. How do you explain that? Are you telling me there was a 20+ foot long drag saw? Or are you telling me that it was done with a push saw? They made a perfectly straight cut over 20 feet long with a push saw. There are still some cuts that I think are difficult, not necessarily 100% impossible, but difficult to explain via copper tools. But yeah, a lot of the claims for high technology, they do fall apart under higher scrutiny, but you still have the absolutely undeniable vases. And in fact, like, as I was doing research this week, every time one of the claims I made, I found that they were false. I just got more and more excited because it made me realize that my roof was not collapsing, right? The main central pillar of the vases and the other pieces of inexplicable history are strong enough to still hold up all of my claims, even without these smaller supporting pieces, like things like this basalt paving. I don't think this took anything, any type of high technology. As impressive and as beautiful and as flat as these are, flat surfaces are not unachievable. Lapping, as I've discussed, you can make a beautiful flat surface. But making a perfect circle and doing that thousands of times and stacking them on top of each other over and over again to make a perfect vase both inside and outside, it is wholly and entirely outside of the possibility of hand tools. And it's even extremely difficult to imagine with the type of tools that we're seeing in this video. No, not this video. In this video? Yes, in this video. Using wooden and stone tools like this, you can't possibly get within tolerances of a human hair. And that's what is being shown in these ancient vases that have been scanned by Ben from Uncharted X. So it still demands a very significant rewriting of history. We're not talking about just, because what's being depicted in this video would also be a rewriting of history. No tool like this has ever been discovered or depicted. This is a rewriting of history. They're attempting to rewrite history right here in this Scientists Against Myths video with these tools right here. But I think a more significant rewriting of history is needed with these vases, with things like the Mount Kailas Temple, which had 2 million tons of granite removed. 2 million tons of granite removed from a mountain to create the Mount Kailas Temple. And we've never found any of that rubble. 2 million tons of granite just disappeared. Yeah, for sure. I can do that. And I really, really like ancient architects. I've been following him for years. Something interesting about his channel is that he used to be far more on the alternative side. He used to post videos about levitating blocks with sound and stuff like that. And now he's coming out with videos going, hey, look, this basalt paving didn't require any high technology at all. So I've also gone through a similar transition myself, and I've seen a lot of people go through this similar process where, you look at some of these things from the past and you go, well, that's just got to be impossible. And then you learn more about it, like the Antikythera mechanism. I also highly recommend ClickSpring's channel if you're looking for sources of cool historical things. ClickSpring is a clockmaker who is recreating the Antikythera mechanism. He's one of over 20 people recreating the Antikythera mechanism, but he's the only person who's doing so completely, in my opinion. Machining the Antikythera mechanism, Antikythera fragments, and there's another. He used to have another playlist about the tools for the Antikythera mechanism. I'm not sure. Maybe that's the fragments now. Maybe it was just retitled. But yeah, I highly recommend his channel. If I were to just look at the Antikythera mechanism myself, I would declare it was impossible. It was absolutely impossible with the technology that they had. It must have been proof of high technology and all kinds of stuff. But if you take the time to watch all of his videos, he goes through not only the process of recreating the Antikythera mechanism itself, but recreating all of the tools used to create the Antikythera mechanism, and doing so without using any high technology. So I would have declared the Antikythera mechanism impossible without high tech, without having someone far smarter explain it to me. I'm currently declaring the vases impossible without high tech, but that might also be possible, and someone smarter just needs to come along and explain it to me. What absolutely is not possible, though, I am not willing to budge on this. I will put my reputation on the line. Those vases were not created with hand tools. It's so far removed from the realm of possibility. It's like it's nowhere near possible to create that many perfect circles with hand tools with less error than the width of a human hair. It's just not possible. So that's where I'm gonna leave this video. I'm gonna sign out. I think with my signed declaration that the vases are simply impossible with hand tools, and my current opinion is that it requires a far higher degree of technology than what Egyptians have currently been accredited with, or than what you see in like this video. I think it requires a far higher degree of technology than that. Wood doesn't allow for less than a hair's width of tolerance. Loose stones doesn't allow. How much refining, though, could be done, how much perfection could be eked out by an actual genius, by someone like Imhotep or by someone like ClickSpring, a genuine artisan. I don't know. All I do know is it's definitely not done with hand tools. So history still needs rewritten. Much of what is frequently cited as evidence for high technology isn't, but history absolutely still needs rewritten. There are missing pieces that need to be put in place, and whether that is Atlantis or something far more simple but still just as impressive, we still don't have answers, and that's what I'm after. So thank you guys. Really appreciate. One last time, I'm going to ask if you'll let me know in the chat, were you taught in school that the ancient Egyptians, that in Khufu's time, in early dynastic Egypt, did they have the wheel or not? Or do you not know? It's totally fine if you can't remember. But were you taught in schools that ancient Egypt didn't have the wheel? And with that, I am signing out. I will see you guys next week, next Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Live call-in show. Feel free to call in and share your thoughts and opinions. Signing out.